Good morning, children. We are continuing our reading of Jake the Drake Know It All by Andrew Clements. We are on chapter 2, Big News. As you remember from chapter 1, Mr. Lenny Cordo came to school and he wants to bring a computer, but Jake has to become a know-it-all. So here we go. Chapter 2, big news. When something big is going to happen at school, the kids are always the last to know. First the principal, and then the teachers, and the other grown-ups get everything figured out. Then they tell me and my friends about it, which doesn't seem very fair, but that's how it happens. So one Tuesday morning before Christmas vacation, there was an assembly for the kids in third grade, fourth grade, and fifth grade. I sat up front with all the other third graders. The principal looked huge. Mrs. Carp is always tall, but standing up on a stage that morning in the green dress, she looked like a giant piece of celery. There was someone else on the stage. It was this man I had never seen before. He was wearing a yellow sport coat and a purple tie with green polka dots. It was the first time I had ever seen a yellow sport coat or a purple tie with green polka dots. I thought maybe he worked for a circus. He sat on the folding chair and he had a wide roll of paper lying across his lap. It was noisy in the auditorium. Then Miss Carp held up 2 fingers and leaned toward the microphone. Miss Carp should not be allowed to have a microphone. She doesn't need one. Every kid in the school knows how loud she can yell. When Mrs. Carp yells, it feels like the tiles are going to peel off the floor and start flying around the room. No one wanted to hear Mrs. Carp yell, and especially not into a microphone, so it got quiet in about 1 second. Mrs. Carp said, "Good morning, students," and then she paused. So all of us said, "Good morning, Mrs. Carp." Then Mrs. Carp said, "I have good news this morning. The people at Wonky's Computer Store have been talking to our Board of Education, and in just 1 month, our school is going to have 20 brand new computers for our media center. 20 new computers! Isn't that wonderful?" Mrs. Carp paused, so all the kids and the teachers in the audience clapped. Some of the fifth graders started cheering and shouting, "Yay! All right!" and "Awesome!" So Mrs. Carp had to hold up 2 fingers again. It got quiet right away. Then she said, "But there's a reason that I've asked just the third, fourth, and fifth grade classes to come here this morning. And that's because during the next 2 last week of January, our school is going to have a science fair." Mrs. Carp paused again, but no one clapped this time. Then she said, "This is the first time we've had a science fair at Dupree Elementary School. So this is something brand new for all of us. And to tell you more about our very first science fair, I'd like to introduce Mr. Lenny Cordo. He's the manager of Wonky's Super Computer Store. Mr. Cordo?" The man in the yellow sport coat and the purple tie and the green polka dots stood up. He forgot he had that roll of paper in his lap. It dropped onto the floor and rolled off the front of the stage. A lot of kids started laughing, and then Mrs. Carp moved back towards the microphone, and the laughing stopped. Mrs. Snavin got up from her chair in the front row. She picked up the wide roll of paper and handed it back to the man. Mr. Lenny Cordo was a lot shorter than Mrs. Carp, so he had to pull the microphone down and then said, "Thank you, Mrs. Carp. I am so glad to be here." That's what Mr. Cordo said, but he didn't look that way. There was sweat all over his forehead and a roll of paper in his hands was shaking. I guess we looked scary, so he talked fast to get it over with. "At Wonky's Supercomputer Store, we love kids. At Wonky's Supercomputer Store, we think it's never too early to get kids excited about science and computers and the future." And that's what Wonky's Supercomputer Store is proud to sponsor the first annual Dupree Heights Elementary School Science Fair. And that's when Mr. Cordo held up the wide piece of paper and let it unroll. It was a banner and it said Wonky's first annual elementary school science fair. The biggest word on the banner was Wonky's, and the whole banner was upside down. There was a little laughing, but it stopped because Mrs. Cordro kept talking. Mr. Cordro kept talking. He wasn't scared anymore. Now he sounded like a guy selling cars on TV. In the real world, the world where all of you will live and learn and work in the future, people get rewards for doing good work. And that is why Wonky's Supercomputer Store is offering a grand prize for the best science fair project in the grade 3, grade 4, and grade 5. When you say those words, grand prize, kids pay attention. It got so quiet, and there's Mr. Cordro and the upside down spine. Look how tall Mrs. Carp is. Wow. It got so quiet, I could almost hear the sweat sliding down Mr. Cordro's forehead. He saw we were listening now, so he took his time. That's right, there will be 3 grand prizes for the first annual Wonky Science Fair. And do you want to know what each grand prize will be? With one giant voice, every kid in the auditorium shouted, "Yes!" So Mr. Cordo leaned closer to the microphone and shouted back, "Then I'm going to tell you, the grand prize for the best science fair project in the grade 3, grade 4, and grade 5 will be a brand new, hyper cross-functional Bluetooth 12 computer system." I couldn't believe it. For the past 3 months, that Bluetooth 12 computer had been advertised on TV, on every TV channel and in every magazine and newspaper. I had seen it on billboards and even on the side of a bus. Bluetooth 12 was the computer I had been begging my mom and dad to get. It was the fastest computer with the coolest games and the best connections. It was the computer of my dreams. All around me, kids were clapping and saying, "Great," and "Cool," and "Yay." And then I noticed Kevin and then Marcia. They were sitting in my row of seats. Kevin and Marcia were not clapping. They were not talking. Kevin and Marcia were sitting very still. They were thinking. They were always planning on how to win that Bluetooth 12 computer. My computer! And then Mrs. Carp quieted everyone down. I kept looking around. I could see the other kids were doing the same thing. Kids were starting to think and plan. Mrs. Carp said some other stuff, but I didn't listen. I was thinking too, because I saw that the only thing standing between me and my very own super fast, super cool computer was about 100 other third grade brains. But I had a feeling that the only other brains I really had to worry about belonged to those know-it-alls, Kevin Young and Marcia McCall. And that is the end of chapter 2. I hope you enjoyed today's lesson. Have a great day.